Saints fans and Who-Dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz. With your host, Bob Rose.
Good evening, New Orleans Saints fans, fans of the NFL, and fans of the Bayou Blitz everywhere. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts for the Bayou Blitz. For welcoming us into your homes again on this Thanksgiving Eve. And we want to wish everybody a happy early Thanksgiving, especially to my friend and partner in crime, Mr. Kyle Mosley. How are you tonight, Kyle?
Doing well, Bob. And to the Who-Dat Nation and everyone, happy early Thanksgiving, and eat as much as you like. Some fried turkey down there as well, some hot gumbo and everything else. I remember those days growing up when Mom would be cooking it right now, the gumbo, late at night. And then the professor, it never failed. He would come in at least 12 or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, knocking on the door. Mom, I got to get the gumbo. I got to get the first taste. So, and he was serious about that, man. But, you know, it's good. You guys have a good family time on tomorrow. But we have a big game as well headed into tomorrow, Mr. Rose.
Yeah, we most certainly do. I criticize the NFL scheduling quite a bit. Wondering about the collective brain cells in the commissioner's office often, but you can't really criticize what the NFL has set up for us tomorrow. It's a triple header of football, as we've seen quite a bit in recent years, and it's all rivalry. It is Chicago versus Detroit, which, of course, is a long-time NFL rivalry. Yeah. It is Dallas versus Washington, which is an incredibly bitter rivalry. And then our Thanksgiving nightcap, taking the place of our pumpkin pie, will be the 100th edition of Coke versus Pepsi, Duke versus Carolina, Hatfields versus McCoys, Darts versus Luke, New Orleans Saints versus the Atlanta Falcons. How excited are you for this?
Man, it is going to be a great evening. I'm still debating, should I drive down to New Orleans myself and be a part of all the festivities? But I think when you look at, like you said, every one of the games are rivalries, long-term rivalries, especially the Cowboys and the Washington team, as well as you're thinking about the Bears and the Lions, which, I mean, I recall that walk-off overtime win many years ago that they had down there, you know, when the Bears came back, tied up the game, and then they got the ball, and first kickoff guy went down and scored the touchdown. But you look at these games, they're also meaningful games, though, Bob. That's the thing that's going to be really critical for what you're going to witness on tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like you pointed out, you look through the standings, the Cowboys and the Redskins are kind of duking it out for first place in the NFC East. The Bears, which is many people's surprise team, especially in the NFC this year, they sit on top of the NFC North. But here come the Lions. They're positioning themselves for a potential playoff run themselves. And then we have our New Orleans Saints, who are sitting on top of the NFC South at 9-1, winning 9 straight games. And the Falcons, who come into the game at 4-6. A disappointment to a lot of people, a surprise to many of us. But they're kind of fighting for their playoff lives. But as you and I and all of Who-Dat Nation realizes, you can throw records out the window when these two teams play. It's just going to be a slugfest from the opening whistle to the final gun.
Right. You know, and that's how rivalries are. I mean, it doesn't matter if all the teams come in to the game like 0-10. You got to win this game. It doesn't matter. I remember the old Bayou Classic whenever Grambling played Southern. Southern, it didn't matter if you didn't win the Bayou Classic, your year was shot. So the same thing with the Saints and Falcons, man. We, of course, visited them first in our second home, the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta and won there, to be able to have them to visit the Mercedes-Benz Superdome and come out with a win with a primetime national audience looking and waiting to see what's going to happen with the New Orleans Saints. Can they sustain the momentum that we have had for the previous 9 games and go on a 10-game streak, or should we be able to see a fall, a little stumble or collapse? That's what they're waiting to see, man. It's a pivotal game, Bob, and no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Falcons need this game to stay alive. Is pretty much it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I don't know what their mathematical chances are for a postseason berth right now, but at 4-6, they're really clawing just to stay in it, like you said. They need this game to stay in the race. Otherwise, you can just about count them out. But at the same time, I mean, don't count out the desperation factor on the New Orleans side either. Yes, as it stands right now, they are the top-seeded team in the NFC with the best record, tied for the best record in the NFL with the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have one more win, but that's only because the Saints have had their bye week and the Rams are coming onto their bye week this week. But if you look at the remaining schedules of New Orleans and Los Angeles, on paper anyway, the Saints have a much tougher schedule. And they need, if they finish tied in the conference standings with the Rams, the Saints will get that home field advantage because of their victory a few weeks ago against Los Angeles. But if the Saints trip up a couple of times and the Rams maintain their current course, New Orleans could wind up. Now we're obviously jumping way ahead here, but New Orleans could wind up having to go on the road for a playoff game, even if it is in Los Angeles, or even if it means coming into the game as a number 2 seed.
Yeah.
And I'm careful not to use the word desperation, but when people tell me that the Falcons need this game, I can't disagree with that, but I counter with the Saints need this game every bit as much.
Yeah. The way I look at it like this, the Saints need this game because the national media, number one, we need to talk about Monday night, right? But the national media really has been pushing for the Rams to be the first seed, and they want them to be the winners of the Super Bowl already. If you can dispute me on that, I would love to go ahead and dispute you. But we really do need to talk about that, Bob. But when you look at the Saints and the road ahead, we have to play Carolina twice, which both of those games are going to be highly contested. Of course, we're playing the Falcons, right? We have to play the Steelers, and that's going to be really a battle as well, man. And the Bucks, you don't know which Bucks team you're going to get when we visit Tampa, right? So, all in all, man, one or two things is going to happen, Bob. Yeah, we may have to go on the road if we lose a few and come back from the second place to third place, or, we don't get the bye, right? Or you're going to see a battle-tested and ready team in the New Orleans Saints. I believe our schedule has been one of the toughest schedules, if you rate it today, of any of the schedules in the National Football League, right? And what have we done? We have been gritty. We have been gutsy. We have been dynamic. Wow. I mean, if you look at how the team has played and the psychological advancement and progression you've seen in how they have played, as well as how Sean Payton has been calling these games, man, you've got to say, man, I really like our chances. I really like our chances if it's at home or on the road.
Yeah. I don't think anybody that's paid attention to the New Orleans Saints, and you notice my verbiage, because I know we're going to talk about the national talking heads in a minute. But anybody that's paid attention to the New Orleans Saints cannot help but be impressed by everything you just mentioned. If you want to get into a shootout with the Saints, fine. They'll beat you the way they beat the Rams, the way they beat the Falcons. If you want to get down into a dirty, knock it around slugfest, fine, they'll beat you that way. They did it with the Browns. They did it with the Ravens. They did it with the Vikings. If you just want to come out a tiny bit flat, fine. Then the Saints will blow you out of the water like we've seen the last 2 weeks with Philadelphia and Cincinnati. New Orleans, and this is what has a lot of people saying that questioning whether this might be the best team Sean Payton has put on the field so far. That's tough to dispute. I mean, the final results will sort themselves out. But as it stands right now, these New Orleans Saints, and we mentioned it last week when we had some great guests on with Kenny Times and Mr. Willie Roaf. They kind of seconded what we were saying. The Saints are imposing their will on every single opponent. Doesn't matter the way you want to play. Sean Payton, Drew Brees, Cam Jordan on the defensive side of the ball. They have the leadership. They have the talent. They have the youth, the athleticism, the aggressiveness, and the confidence. They'll beat you any way you want to play the game.
Yeah, and you look back at the beginning of the season, Bob, and of course the Tampa game was a stumble in the dome, the home opener. But we still put up 40 points in the losing cause. Think about that, right? The battle that we had with the Browns and to be able to go into overtime and come back and be victorious. Those two games were highly important for the mental makeup of this team. That's what I believe. And to really go on the road later to face the Giants and to defeat them the way we did as well. I mean, you look at every one of those games have really positioned them to where we are today. Now, can we run the table? I believe we can, man. Is it going to be possible? In a lot of ways, people are going to say, well, you would like to see the Saints kind of stumble or take a step back or whatever. But right now, the way things are shaping up, man, I wouldn't want to stumble. I don't think we need to, right? Unless it comes down to the final game of the season when we play Carolina and it's pretty much out of hand what's going to happen. I think we could possibly give up that game, man. But, I like what I see in the team. You see the swagger, right? I don't want them to be overconfident. I don't want to be arrogant, but you can see the swagger and the confidence in what is being put out onto the field from week to week from Sean Payton and the coaching crew. The game plans have been really solid. We still have some back issues of the defensive backfield that we need to clean up. I still think they could be a little bit more, reroute some of those receivers a little bit more, but if we get Davenport back, we keep Rankins is just playing phenomenally well, man. Oh, I have to applaud him. I really do, man. What I see from Rankins and when he does that little shake, you have to love it. You have to love it, right? And, of course, you got constant pressure from Cam Jordan all the time. We just need – I know Okafor has done his best and, thinking about where he's come from to be able to be as effective as he has been at defensive end, especially filling in for the rookie. Man, if we get Davenport back and if he's able to contribute athletically, think what's going to happen, man. And Trey Hendrickson, he's done a pretty good job as well. I've got to give him some kudos. But I know I'm rambling on, but I'm just kind of excited what I see in this team right now. Now, of course, I don't want to be negative ninny, but I still think we're not getting enough of the production from the tight end guys. We had Watson a couple of games ago. He did very well. Hill had that tight end screen last game, picked up several yards. I think, was it 16 yards or something to that nature. But all in all, man, that production from the tight end side is going to be still a necessity. So bringing in a guy like Brandon Marshall with his size and his ability to kind of go into the slot and be able to go vertical down the seams and kind of put some one-on-one pressure on either a linebacker or a safety is going to be critical for how we continue to advance through the rest of the season into the playoffs.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think the addition of Marshall could really add something to their offense because of the physicality and experience that he brings onto the field. I can't disagree with you with what we've seen from the tight end position. It seems to be feast or famine for Ben Watson. We'll either see him catch 4 or 5 big passes in the neighborhood of about 70 to 75 yards and maybe a score, or we won't see him show up on the stat sheet at all. Josh Hill has been inconsistent as far as receiving production throughout his career. Now, he's one heck of a blocker, and that can't be understated. And Dan Arnold has made some nice plays over the last month or so. Yeah, but he is what he is. I mean, he's a reserve. He's a reserve that you cannot necessarily count on for high-end production. What I was not pleasantly surprised, but what I was thrilled to see was Tre'Quan Smith have a really big game last week. 10 catches, over 150 yards. We've been calling for this to happen on this show for a couple of weeks now. You and I have both mentioned how much more comfortable he looks in the offense as he's running his routes. And we were expecting the statistical production to eventually come through, and it did last week. So, there is a little bit of a concerning issue with him, as you and I were talking about just before we went on air. But if Tre'Quan can stay healthy, the Saints, of course, have Michael Thomas, who is one of the top receivers in the NFL right now, and adding Marshall and Keith Kirkwood, who has put forth a couple of really impressive outings. This receiving core is not the weakness that we thought that it might be outside of Thomas going down the stretch. What do you think?
Man, I have to agree with you. You look at the receiving core as well as the running back, either running back. You're going to get excellence and outstanding performances from those guys, right? You got Keith Kirkwood, who now – a defense has to say, well, if we put a double team on Thomas, what we're going to do? Well, now Tre'Quan has stepped up and 10 catches and 100 billion yards that he put on him, right? Then this kid Kirkwood is catching the ball. And now they're going to bring in Tommy Lee and Brandon Marshall. What do we do? That's what a defense is thinking, man. And defensive coordinators are having to say, all right, if we kind of shut down one, are we going to shut down the others? And you saw that, right? Beginning of the game, okay, if Mike Thomas is not open, they went to Kirkwood and Tre'Quan, right? And then they kind of paid more attention to those guys, and that opened it up for Mike Thomas. And that's the problem you're going to have. And if you have these guys' confidence that Drew Brees is putting into them, that makes it even worse because Drew now said to Tre'Quan, I believe in you. He said to the coaching staff, I believe in Kirkwood. We need to get him up off the practice squad. If your quarterback is saying these things and having really his trust in those type of wide receivers, man, I think the world is going to really be shocked. And I know we hear everything about the Rams wide receivers. We have every capabilities in Woods and Cooks and all those other guys, but our defense played those guys pretty well, did we not? You look at what happened in Kansas City, which Tyreek Hill and Kelsey and those guys. I still look at the matchups, and I look at our team versus those two teams, and I still have to say, and I'm not trying to be totally biased, Bob, but I still have to say we have just as much or better team chemistry and team talent than those two squads do at this time.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, let's start at quarterback. Throughout Drew Brees' career, he has made average wide receivers good wide receivers great, and now he has a great wide receiver in Michael Thomas. It's a little bit too early to call Traquan Smith great, but we certainly love his skill set. We have since midsummer, since he was showing off some of his natural abilities in OTAs, and then of course through the preseason games. And now obviously he feels extremely comfortable. And now you add a veteran such as Brandon Marshall into the mix. Now it remains to be seen how much Marshall has left in the tank, but we know he's motivated because he's an emotional player that wants to win. And one of the things that stuck out to me in a funny way about that Eagles game, did you see a couple of clips that they showed of Marshall on the sidelines? And I mean, his grin was just, it couldn't be any wider. He was just cheesing away. He can't wait for the opportunity to get onto the field and contribute with these guys. I think he knows his role, that he's not going to be the number one or even probably the number two option, but just to be a part of what is going on in this offense. And then, like you said, when you have a quarterback like Brees going to his coaching staff saying, I want this guy Kirkwood off the practice squad. I want to throw balls to him. He can really contribute something to this offense. Kirkwood wasn't a high draft pick. He wasn't a draft pick at all. He was an undrafted free agent. And for him to make an impression on a legendary future Hall of Fame quarterback like that, that tells you what kind of skill set that Kirkwood could potentially bring to this offense. And we already know what Ingram and Kamara can do, is certainly as running backs, which is another story in and of itself, but in the passing game as well. This, like you said, I wouldn't take any other receiving core over this one right now, built from top to bottom.
Right. I don't know what player personnel guys and scouts were looking at, but I viewed some of Kirkwood's video, and I really recall that, was it not Triplet? Was it Underhill? Yeah, Underhill, I believe. He was touting Kirkwood early on and telling people that this guy is pretty good, right? I'm just going to say this, man. I think we have great talent. I think we have great team chemistry that's going on all phases of the game. Well, second, we still have to do something about the punt return issues, trying to get more out of that issue. But, we're facing some pretty good punters. We have some of those punters didn't give Kamara a chance to really do anything most of the year as well. We've got to be fair about that. But I think, man, when you have I think we have some guy named Thomas Morstead that's on our team. He doesn't play much, but
no.
But it's good to know that he's there, available, and Lutz has been performing very well, right? So you look at all of these phases, and the coaching has been done pretty well. Where do we say is the concern? And the concern still is in that defensive backfield, Bob, and I know I'm rehashing the old song over and over and over, but how well are they going to stand up to Ridley, Jones, and Sanu on tomorrow is going to be the key. If these guys are able to put the pressure on them, be physical, And that's the only way you can do it with Ridley, man. You've got to be physical with this kid. You can't let him like Crawley was giving him 8 yards run and gun cushion. Eli Apple, if he's going to be on him, he has to be physical on him. Julio, you just know 1 or 2 shots are going to be down the field for him, right? So how Marshawn Lattimore is going to control that, how the over-top protection from Marcus Williams will be down the field is going to be critical as well. He's going to have to make some really important decisions and fast decisions this game, you know. So I just like what we see in the team, but I'm still concerned until we see what happens next on tomorrow with the defensive backfield. That's my only concern.
Yeah, and that's my biggest concern as well, at least on that side of the ball. If you remember the last time, well, I know you remember, but the last time these two teams played in Week 3, of course, was one of the most exciting offensive games of the season. The Saints ended up winning 43-37 in overtime. But that game, at least as much as that Tampa Bay opener, was a big-time struggle for the Saints secondary. Ridley looked like the next coming of Jerry Rice or Randy Moss. Ridley finished with 146 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game, and all of his big catches were in the coverage, and I use that term loosely, in the coverage of either Ken Crawley or P.J. Williams.
Right.
When Dennis Allen switched Marshawn Lattimore from Julio Jones over to Ridley when they went man coverage, when he switched Lattimore from Jones to Ridley in the third quarter, then Matt Ryan, smartly might I add, Matt Ryan started targeting Julio. And up until that point, Julio had only 1 or 2 catches. But when once Crawley or Williams was on Jones, Julio finished with 96 yards. And Crawley doesn't seem to be in the defensive backfield's plans now. He's gotten very, very few snaps over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And Eli Apple, of course, has stepped in at that starting cornerback spot opposite Lattimore. And like you said, Apple likes to play physical. We know Lattimore prefers to play physical as well. So I would like to see Apple and Lattimore get physical with Ridley and Jones at the line of scrimmage. We know that Lattimore likes to play Jones physically because those two, this is the 4th game that they're going up against each other, and it's been almost pay-per-view worthy, the battles that they've had, but they need to control Ridley. I remember a lot of people saying immediately after that game, even though the Saints had won, they were coming down on the pass rush or lack thereof. And my response to that was that Crawley and PJ were getting beat so fast that the pass rush, you could have had Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, and Derek Thomas all rushing, and Deacon Jones all rushing the passer. They would not have gotten to Matt Ryan quicker than what he was able to complete those passes to Ridley.
Yeah.
So I think if those cornerbacks can hold up in coverage just a bit longer, that the pass rush up front from New Orleans, the Sheldon Rankins, the Okafors, of course Cam Jordan, and the blitzes that they've been calling with the Mario Davis and Alex Anzalone, I think that they're going to be able to get to Matt Ryan and hurry him into mistakes.
Yeah, hope so. I really do, man. We've got to put some more pressure on Matt Ryan. Of course, Matt Ryan as well as Drew Brees is one of the fastest quarterbacks to be able to get the ball out of his hand. I think Matt Ryan was averaging 2.6, and Drew Brees was at 2.3 seconds to get the ball out of his hand. But, hey, look, we have a special guest on the line with us tonight, Sean Williams from Under the Dome podcast. What's going on, Sean? Welcome to the Bayou Blitz again, my friend.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm honored, as always.
All right. Good to hear your voice, Doc.
I've been listening to you guys pontificate, and, wow, I don't know where I fit in, but It's always I'm always honored to be on with you guys.
Oh, man, it's good to hear your voice. Well, Sean, you heard Bob and I pontificating and perseverating. But tell us, man, based upon what you see from the game coming up, I didn't have a chance to hear you and Alan talk on yesterday, but what's your thoughts on the game between the Saints and Falcons?
I hope it's absolutely a bludgeoning, to be honest. The hate is real, man. I was telling someone today, I don't like the Cowboys, but I absolutely loathe the Falcons. I don't like their players. I don't like their coaches. I don't like many people that are even go through Atlanta going somewhere else. It's
my goodness.
It's the result of years and years. I can remember vividly watching the Steve Barkowski Hail Mary, the Billy White Shoes Johnson plays where he got to dance in the Saints end zone, and that absolutely turned my stomach. But it's a new day, and I think that the Saints right now are Alan and I talked about this last night. I don't have any hesitation offensively now. I'm not talking about the defense, because that's a completely different subject in my mind. Offensively, what we're seeing right now out of the New Orleans Saints is almost a generational thing. I think it's I have absolutely no problem comparing what this offense is doing to Montana's 49ers, Marinos, Dolphins, all those fantastic teams of yesterday, Brady and Moss Patriots, all that. But of course, with that comes the caveat that it's only as relevant as the last time that they took the field, because there's a mission at hand here, and as long as the Rams keep winning, the Saints must keep winning. It's going to turn out to be very interesting as the season plays out.
Right. Sean, you bring up a great point when you were comparing some of offenses of the past, and especially when I didn't even think about this when you brought up Montana's 49ers. I think that is a very similar comparison to the way this Saints offense plays. Everybody now throwing to Rice and Montana throwing to John Taylor. But what a lot of people forget, but what a lot of players will tell you from that time period, is that was far from all they were. If on the rare occasion that they was able damage that Rice was able to do, then Montana would just go to his tight end, Brent Jones, or before that, Russ Francis. Or if you just if you got to the pass pocket and didn't give them much time to pass at all, okay, well, they'll just beat the hell out of you with the running game with Roger Craig, and then a little bit after that with Ricky Waters. And that is very similar to the way this New Orleans offense plays. Okay, if you can control Michael Thomas, then we'll have one of our other guys step up, like Kyle said earlier about Kirkwood or about Traquan Smith. And all right, well, you're gonna drop drop 8 into pass coverage. Okay, well, we're still either going to pick you apart with Kamara and Ingram dumping the ball off in front of you, or we're just going to beat the hell out of you with the running game. There is not many ways that this Saints offense has been contained yet. But I wanted to ask both of you guys, is Jermon, as we know, Teron Armstead is going to be out again this week. And Bushrod did a magnificent job, I thought, and filling in last week against Philadelphia. But is he a little bit of a liability against the Falcons' edge rushers, Vic Beasley and Takaris McKinley?
I wouldn't say he was a liability. But there again, these guys are being graded. The quick and easy answer, these guys are going to be graded. The most relevant thing about them is the last thing that they did. So that being said, I didn't hear Michael Bennett's name one time Sunday. And I think that's due in large part to Jermon Bushrod. He may not be the guy that we had on the roster in 2009 when we went to the Super Bowl, but he doesn't have to be. He's playing on what has quietly been the most durable and dependable offensive line in the league and most productive, I would assert. And I wouldn't see him as a liability at all. He's a cagey veteran that brings more than just size and brute power to the contest. He's going to know how to deal with this and how to handle that. Now Beasley and McKinley are very good players. I want to say that if they're going to give up the first sack since the Baltimore Ravens game, this would likely be the team that it would happen against. The Falcons are very good at, although they've been decimated by injuries on defense, that's primarily in the second and third levels. That pass rush is still intact.
Yeah.
And I might add that if they have any hope of possibly slowing down this offense, it's going to have to stem from that right there. They're going to have to be able to get to Breeze. I don't believe that they're going to be able to, but, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, I agree. Bushrod is not much of a liability, in my opinion. I believe that he did a very good job last week. He can do a good job this week. I think he's going to be more on McKinley this week than Beasley. And, they signed Bruce Irvin as well. I just believe this. Breeze is getting the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. He makes decisions very quickly, right? The problem would only come if that secondary is able to provide coverage that will have Breeze to extend the plays a little bit longer, like into the 3 to 4 second realm, where their defensive ends can get to him, right? But if Breeze is able to put the ball on those guys and can control the tempo of the game, and the one way you can control a defensive end, and Sean and Bob, if you guys really observe this, is the running game. When those guys the past several weeks, and Bob, remember, I always use the boxing analogy. If you give these guys a good few gut punches here and there, that's how you wear down a boxer first. It's not the head punch, it's the gut punch. And that's what the Saints have been able to do. The gut punches or the runs. And if they continue to give some gut punches, what did you start to see early on in that first quarter in the Rams game? Those guys were holding their size. They had the hands on the hips, right? The same thing in the Ravens game. Remember, the hands started going on the hips. And you saw it again last week. I noticed that first quarter, Philadelphia, those hands were on the hips. And I think Troy Aikman noticed that as well. Those guys
certainly did.
They were tired. And they're only tired because they were being out physicaled, if that's a word, physicaled by our offensive line. Thank you, Sean. I mean, think about it, guys. That's how you're going to control the game. That's how you're going to control the game.
And I think if you go back to, I believe it was the Baltimore game that you just referred to, how on that first drive they went for it on fourth down a couple of times. They pounded them, and they faked that punt early. They wanted to wear out that defense.
Right.
And it had the desired effect because, as you saw in the second half, the Saints were able to come back from being down And they, as you said, that's a very, very astute point. They just absolutely wear out the team that they're playing, and they hit them from so many different sides almost at once. Okay, you want to stop the run? That's okay. We got Michael Thomas. We've got Austin Carr. We've got Kirkwood. We've got and by the way, whenever you guys get tired of trying to stop these, we have a 6-time Pro Bowler that's standing on the sidelines waiting for his turn. Okay, you want to stop our All-Pro wide receivers? Okay, here, take a Mark Ingram to the face and try to catch Alvin Kamara as he gets the corner on you. There's so many weapons, and I think the very pinnacle of that pyramid that you're talking about is you have the very most capable, studious, prepared trigger man that has ever played the game. Peyton Manning has been noted years and years as being the most studious. Well, I would put Brees right there beside him. There's no one that prepares for the game more than Drew Brees does. Mm-hmm. You're not going to throw anything at him that he hasn't seen, that he's not prepared for. And whether it slipped people's noticing this season or not, he is having, to use this term again, he is having one of those generational seasons.
Performances, yeah.
You're almost 3/4 of the way through the season, and the man has thrown 25 touchdowns to 1 interception. He's throwing, of course, I believe Sunday brought his percentage down slightly, but I mean 78 to 80%, somewhere in there, I think.
Yeah, he's at 76.6, I believe now.
Yeah, it's the season that Brees is having is absolutely phenomenal, and I'll go on record with you guys. I didn't say this last night, but I wanted to. If Drew Brees is not awarded the MVP at the end of this season, I have absolutely no faith whatsoever in the system. And I said this in 2011, incidentally. Of course, I thought it was going to be capped by a Super Bowl MVP that year, but Alex Smith, if Vernon Davis, I still have nightmares, wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat and what have you over that. But if Drew Brees does not get the MVP for this season, it is absolute robbery, in my opinion.
Yeah.
People can say what they want about Gurley. They can say what they want about Mahomes, and I have nothing against those guys. They're outstanding at what they do, but no one is a more valuable player to their team and to this league this season than what Drew Brees has accomplished.
Yeah, Sean, and I have to agree with you. And 2 of the most vocal national media guys and 2 Hall of Famers have been pumping him up, and that's Deion Sanders as well as Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner I think he went on record this past week to say it would be a travesty if Drew Brees does not win the MVP. And that's a very ringing endorsement from a guy that's highly respected. But Deion Sanders 3 weeks ago was saying this and arguing against guys, that Drew Brees is having a NFL MVP performance. But let's look at it like this, guys. We all know the NFL likes their media darlings, right? And
sure.
And as much as we can go on record and say, yeah, well, he's definitely our MVP, and most of these guys can possibly see he is the MVP. But when you put out a all-star referee team to be on Monday Night Football on want to be classified in the Super Bowl and in those runnings for MVP. Those young men. Now, Drew.
Well, I can go you one further, Kyle. This game was supposed to be played in Mexico City, but unfortunately the field was this, and it wasn't in shape for that, and blah, blah, blah. Did you guys not know that this game was going to be played there on that date? Come on. And you make it a home game for the team that just happens to be trying to establish a franchise in a team in a city where at least two, that's not even counting the Raiders, at least two teams have failed at supporting a franchise. And you give them a home game because they're 9-1.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
Well, guys, the season is over. Didn't you know that? Super Bowl 53 was played on Monday night. I'm going to say this, dude. I watched that game.
Not impressed. I will say I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed.
I didn't have ESPN. I had ESPN Deportes. So I've learned a few new Spanish terms to go with it. And this kind of ties in with you guys because at one point during the game, the names don't translate into Spanish. They're just the names. And they showed a flashback of the 49ers playing the Rams. And I don't know the relevance because obviously I don't speak much Spanish, but they kept saying, Jim Everett. And I thought, boy, that Bob needs to see this. His buddy Jim is being blown up on Telemundo. But it was an excellent game. I don't remember a game in recent, outside of Saints, obviously, but I don't remember a game in recent memory that was quite so entertaining. It reminded me quite a bit of the last time that I saw Pat Mahomes play at Texas Tech. It just happened to be against the University of Oklahoma.
Right.
And Baker Mayfield, Joe Mixon, D. Westbrook. In that game, Pat Mahomes had 83 attempts.
Right.
Passed for over 800 yards, scored, I want to say 57, 59 points, and lost.
Look, Sean, in my opinion, and guys, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, the Los Angeles Rams needed 3 defensive touchdowns to win that game. Okay? They needed 3 defensive touchdowns. If they didn't get one of those defensive touchdowns, they would have lost. Right?
Yes.
Another thing, the key was the young man had the ball 2 times within the 2 minutes, right? And he couldn't drive his team down to at least get 3 points.
Yeah.
Okay? Here's my thought. I'm sorry, Bob or Sean, but here's my thought. I love the potential of both of those young men. I see that they're going to be dynamic players for this league, and it gives me a lot of hope to see Goff, Mahomes, Wentz, and those guys. I think the league is going to be pretty good, right, with those class of players, and Baker Mayfield as well. Now, Drew Brees or Tom Brady, even Aaron would have done something a little bit more dynamic in the bigger game. In the context of, if you're going to have a game like this, the way that game was played from both sides, I'm not impressed, because it wasn't like it was really other than Darnold, right? He's the one guy that made some really tremendous plays, and that linebacker for the Rams, he made a tremendous play on the ball as well. But the Kansas City Chiefs defense is suspect, as well as that Rams defense is suspect if they gave up that 6 touchdowns and the guy threw 3 interceptions and they still lost. If those Rams could not come up with at least one of those defensive touchdowns, game over. We've been talking something totally different this week. That was not the game of the century, in my opinion.
I think you were being polite when you called the defenses of both teams suspect.
I wouldn't say suspect. I'd say convicted.
I would use a term that starts with S to describe both of those defenses, but we're trying to keep it a PG-13-ish show. I'll say this.
Kind of narrows the adjectives, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A little bit. Kansas City won't get out of the AFC. I'm not sure who will, but as long as Kansas City is headed by Andy Reid, they're not getting out of the AFC. And it's not just because of Andy Reid. I think that their offensive line is a little bit shaky, and their defense is an absolute joke. The Rams, and I couldn't help but think this as I watched the game on Monday night. The Rams, and I felt this way when LA played Green Bay, which was, I believe, the week before they played the Saints. And I felt the same way when I watched Los Angeles play Seattle. Every time I see the Rams, I think to myself, this defense looks more vulnerable every week. They have some outstanding individual talent. And Ndamukong Suh can still play. Dante Fowler is a specialized pass rusher, but he's very good at that. Aaron Donald is one of the top 2 or 3 best defensive players in the entire National Football League. And when they get Aqib Talib back in the secondary, he and Peters make a pretty good physical cornerback combo. Beatable, but physical. And was it just me, guys? Or did the Rams offense not look the same without Cooper Kupp? They look shaky, and I'm using that term really loosely because they're right up there with the Saints in all the NFL offensive categories. I agree with you, Sean and Kyle. I think Jared Goff is an extremely good quarterback. Gurley is probably the top pure running back in the NFL. And Woods and Cooks, we know what they can do. But I think Cooper Kupp was the linchpin that held that receiving core together. He was the guy. He was what Michael Thomas is to Drew Brees, is what Cooper Kupp, I think, is to Jared Goff. A security blanket that he knows is going to be open because he knows how, Kupp is an outstanding route runner. He gets open. He's quicker than what you'd think he is coming off of the line of scrimmage, and not many defensive backs can stay with him. Well, Kupp is out for the year now, and while they still have weapons offensively, they're just, in my opinion, they've been looking a little bit shaky the last couple of weeks. What do you guys think?
I think that you're absolutely right, and I'll give you an analogy that most of your followers could probably closer identify with. You look at the offense, the passing offense for the New Orleans Saints last year as opposed to the year prior with whatever the malfunction was regarding Willie Snead. When you had Snead, you had 2 and within, I think, 100 yards of being a third receiver with 1,000 yards receiving in the same season. And, last year, with the lack of production at the tight end position, and you didn't have Snead as the slot or the intermediate route runner, if it was either going to be a pass to Kamara in the flats or Ingram, or it was going to be the long ball to Michael Thomas. There really wasn't that intermediate weapon for the Saints offense. Now, that being said, I think that this year they've had a cast of different guys. You've seen Kamara in the intermediate role. You've seen there's been maybe not great production out of the tight end position, but you've seen adequate production, be that Ben Watson, Hill, even Dan Arnold getting in on the action as of late. But I think that the emergence of Traquan Smith quite possibly could create more problems than it does solutions, in the fact that you're going to have a 6-time Pro Bowler, as I alluded to earlier. You're going to have a 6-time Pro Bowler on the sidelines wondering, hey, are they going to they're going to use me? But I mean, it's a great problem to have. I don't know. To be totally honest with you, I'm not scared of the Rams because despite what the national media will tell you, they're not ahead of the New Orleans Saints. I don't care what their record is. We beat them. End of story. They came to our house. We handed their luggage to them and proceeded to send them back to L.A. And I made a post on Facebook the other day. Y'all can it basically directed at the national media. Y'all can disrespect us all you want. All you're doing is making us comfortable because we're used to being there. And if you don't know who we are, every time you go on there and you talk about your 9-1 loss, or now 10-1 Los Angeles Rams, if you don't know who we are the one.
Yeah, we are the one who gave them that big L, right? And what's so funny,
right. And Kyle, what frustrates me so much at the same time, what frustrates me so much is the fact that the game was not nearly as close as what the score was. We beat them by 10 points, and if you remember, they made a comeback in the second. At halftime, it was 35-7,
right?
Or no, wait a minute. They kicked the field goal just before halftime, something like 35-10.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't even as close as what the score represented. And to be totally honest with you, I'll go out on a limb. I've told a few people that I don't think that we're going, as a lot of people have suggested, I don't think that the Saints will play the Rams in the NFC Championship game, strictly because I don't believe that the Rams will be there.
You know what, Sean? And I think we're here. Like Martin Lawrence, we're here, man. We're here. We're vibing because I was talking earlier this week about the same thing. The way that defense is playing, and if let's say they run against, let's say the Bears defense, okay?
Yeah.
It's not going to be a survivable way for them to win. And I know people are going to say, oh, you must be crazy. I mean, they have Cooks. They have all those guys there. And Goff is just playing out of his mind. What was questionable to me, and someone says, Sean McVay did such a great job. He had such big gonads to be able to throw the ball 3 straight times. No, that was plain ludicrous, in my opinion.
I told my wife sitting here watching that game Monday night, they had I want to say a 7-point lead maybe at that point. And they came in and ran 3 straight pass plays. And it's really late in the fourth quarter. And I looked at my wife and I said, that is the most asinine thing I've ever seen in my life. You have Todd Gurley and you're not running out the clock.
He did it twice.
On a absolutely exhausted defense.
When you are under 2 minutes in the game, why do you call 3 straight pass plays? Now, either you're highly confident that your guys are going to convert, great, because we've seen that from Peyton before, right? Or you're just not playing the game, strategizing the right way. And I understand that
when you get to the playoffs, though, Kyle, I've seen this movie before. Let me refresh everyone's memory.
But Sean, let me just interject. That's where I was going with this. When you come down to the playoffs, right? That's what you're about to say. That doesn't work. The games get tighter. the way the guys play the game gets tighter, and if they haven't been in that situation before, they don't understand the dynamics of what's going to happen or what we need to do as a team. I just think he took a situation and exasperated the situation, which could have been catastrophic for that team. And Mahomes, if he played a little bit better and not causing that second interception, could have taken that team down and won the game. That's my point.
Absolutely. And to bring this thing kind of full circle, if you want to know how that Sean McVay mindset works in the postseason, think back a few years, there was this juggernaut that had the league MVP at quarterback and had a 25-point lead at halftime of the Super Bowl and wanted to create that signature moment for their league MVP quarterback and had arguably the most dynamic running back tandem in the league and ran the ball, I think, 6 or 7 times in the entire second half. How did that turn out?
Yeah.
You're the way that you play the game. Yeah, the way that you play the game in the postseason has to change. But you know, in big game environments like what you saw Monday night, your coaching has to change. That's not just another game. It's bigger than just another week on the schedule. And there's every game that the Rams play from this point on, while it may not be as difficult on paper, it's going to have added significance due to the little race that they have going on with the Saints, because they know that, or they should know that, you know, if this thing keeps going as it's going and the Saints continue to blow people up, which if you look down the schedule, there's not exactly any the heavyweights are pretty much behind us. Of course, you know, you still have Pittsburgh, you still have 2 bloodbaths with Carolina, I'm sure. But, you know, it's starting to ease up a little bit for the Saints. The Rams, I think they play some typewriter maintenance school somewhere down along through there somewhere, but their schedule is not as difficult as ours. But if they don't maintain that pace and they slip up along the way, they're ours, because we already hold the tiebreaker on them. You know, this imaginary lead that everyone in the media wants you to believe that they have, it's going to just as magically disappear just as soon as they have their bye week.
Right.
They have to keep pace, as do the Saints. So focus has got to be at an all-time high. There can't be any letdowns. And I think that what you've seen over the past several weeks with the Saints, let's see, after the Rams game, you had the Bengals, which may not they were kind of crippled up when they came, or when we went to them to play, and people called it a classic letdown game for the Saints, a trap game, if you will. And I was so glad to see that it didn't turn out that way. These guys, it's almost like a college team. Every week that they go out there, there's something to prove. There's something that they have to earn. I've referred to this to many people before. That Minnesota game last January, while I still wake up as I said earlier, I still wake up in a cold sweat about. But you know, the 2 teams that were involved in that game, they both got something out of it. The Minnesota Vikings got another 7 days added onto their schedule, and they got skull drug, pun intended, in Philadelphia. And the Saints, well, you know what they got out of it? They just got better and better and better. And every win that the Saints stack up this season, I think, is directly attributable to the feeling that was in the pit of their stomach when they walked off that field in Minnesota in January. It gave them purpose. It gave them focus. And, the sky is the limit with these guys because they're playing at just an unbelievable level. I've sit back recently and tried to remember. I pride myself on being a student of the game. Used to have all these videos of like Marion Motley and Jim Brown and all the way up to guys like Eric Dickerson and who is always my favorite, Walter Payton. But all these, I've never seen a team that if you go position by position across the board on the offense that is even remotely comparable to what the Saints are bringing to bear right now. And it's staggering. They're setting records every time that they go out, and all that's great. But, ultimately the only thing that is truly going to matter is whether or not they're playing on February the 3rd.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's to both of you guys' point. That's why the Saints are going into this game with razor sharp focus because of what happened last January. All of those guys are still there. They remember, like you said, Sean, they remember how it felt walking off of the field, not only to lose a playoff game, but to lose in the manner that they did. And they're not about, forget trap game, forget letdown game. That's not going to happen with this group because they know what's at stake, and they know what's at stake every single week. They're out there, like you guys said, they are out there to prove a point every week. They could care less whether they get their pats on the back from the national media. They want respect from the guys on the field. And more so than respect, I think they want feared. And that is a very, very deep term, as you both well know. And they realized that they could put a hated rival, maybe not completely out of their misery, but pretty darn close. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Saints blew out the Falcons this week. Because, again, you're talking national TV, rivalry game, everything that we just talked about what's at stake for New Orleans, not only historically, but more importantly, this season in the right now. I don't know that I'll go out on the limb and predict a blowout, but it wouldn't surprise me. How do each of you guys see this game going?
Well, I can tell you this, man. I believe after witnessing the Cowboys beat the Falcons, that should be a major concern for those guys. The Falcons really did not do much until that second half of the game, and remember it was just 6-3 at halftime, and then when the Cowboys were able to run the ball, now we have an advantage. We have Mark Ingram as well as Kamara who can run the football, right? They were able to control the clock. They were able to put pressure on those guys. And the Falcons made some really critical errors when it came defensively and how they played the Cowboys. I just don't – I can see what you're saying, Bob, and I can be able to – agree that we have that capability of putting a major butt whooping on those guys. The only thing that concerns me is rivalry is a rivalry, and sometimes one or two mistakes can be all the way a game needs to turn. So I just think it's going to be the first 2 quarters is going to be highly competitive. Who comes out in that second half and plays extremely well, that third quarter is going to be the key. That's my take.
Yeah.
Sean?
Well, I think that probably the biggest factor to remember when it comes to this game is there is not another team in the National Football League, save possibly the Carolina Panthers, that knows this New Orleans Saints team like the Atlanta Falcons. To me, the thing that matters the most is the fact that just exactly how depleted their roster is and how stacked the Saints are. Eventually, they're going to run out of bodies to throw out there at this incredible offense that the Saints have. And at the same time, thus far, it's been almost magical just exactly how focused everyone has been on. And, I always cringe in the first quarter every week when I watch them play thinking, okay, I wonder if everybody is ready for this. I wonder if everybody's got their heads where it's supposed to be. Everybody's focused. Everybody's playing their best. Because, odds are, regardless of how great the team is, somebody's going to have a bad day eventually. I hope that doesn't happen. I really do. But at the same time, like I say, odds are that eventually somebody's going to come to work and not be 100%, and that will tell the tale. I don't think that happens this week with the New Orleans Saints. As Bob said, I believe that this has the potential of getting absolutely ugly, given the history, given the rivalry. In Cincinnati, the security teams really PO'd Sean Payton, and he made a statement. He was playing the defending Super Bowl champions last Sunday, and he made a statement. Well, I do believe that at home on Thanksgiving Day, I think it's going to be paramount just exactly where Sean Payton puts the drumstick. I don't think that this is going to turn out well. And as everyone has seen the memes on Facebook, you look at Mark Ingram as a rolling rock when he runs the ball. Well, we're about to kill two birds with one stone, I do believe.
Now, both you guys, and this is the only reason why I hesitate to predict a blowout. And both of you guys said it yourselves, the rivalry.
That's it.
The 100th meeting between the two. We know that the previous 99 meetings, if nothing else, you could count on two things: physicality and unpredictability. But what I want to get from you guys, I want to walk down history lane a little bit. Everybody can spout on, I know, everybody can spout out what Falcons players they hate the most right now. Mine is Matt Ryan. Mine is, thank you. Mine is Matt Ryan and Devontae Freeman currently. Freeman, of course, won't play in this game, thankfully, for Saints fans. But I want to get maybe two or three names and short reasons why Falcons players you hate, like down to the very marrow of your bones, where the mere name mentioned brings back certain memories and foul language out of the mouth. Number one on my list is Roddy White. Let's each take a turn naming one player. You know what? And we'll start with you, Kyle.
Man, Bob, Roddy White. Golly, that is a name that. God,
I got humiliated in front of my children over Roddy White because someone sent me this link, and I obviously, it's Saints make blockbuster trade. And I clicked on the link, and it goes through this whole page of how we traded, let me see, at the time, I think they said Marcus Colston for Roddy White. and man, you could see the red just climb up my neck, up my face. And as I read, I swear people would have thought I had Tourette's because I I was losing it. And the very last line of the article says, "Have a nice April Fool's Day."
Fools, yeah.
Got you.
Look, man, Roddy White, and think about it. He's not that far removed from being in the league, but he's far removed from my mind. I forgot all about him, to be honest with you, man.
I will never forget Roddy White.
I did. I haven't, thinking about somebody who I would hate on the Falcons team. Roddy White is not the guy that came first on my mind, but yeah, he was an irritant to us. Man, look, I just gotta say, everybody, man, everybody that dons that black and white and say rise up. I'm like, come on, ain't old Dixie. Ain't nobody rising up. Sit down because y'all clowns. The bottom line is, man, I just need our team to go out there and just take care of business. Handle themselves, man. That's the bottom line. Just handle themselves.
About the biggest player for the Falcons that was a killer, but one that I really did like a lot was Barkowski. Now, I watched that guy's entire career play out, and I loved him to death. Of course, back then I didn't realize that I was supposed to hate him. I was just watching a good football player play a team that at the time really wasn't quite so good. But, I grew up and learned that if they wear the bird, they need to get plucked. Roddy White, obviously, he didn't know when to shut his mouth. And if there was ever one player that, for example, this past Sunday, one of my very worst memories as a New Orleans Saints fan, absolutely, Vernon Davis and Alex Smith.
Yeah.
But, it broke my heart to watch that play with Smith on Sunday. I respect the guy. I can't say that I'm his number one fan because of what he did to my team, obviously, but it absolutely broke my heart. I was watching the Theismann game when it happened, which was, as it turned out, it wasn't very long after my knee injury. And when I saw the play live, I had to get up and walk outside, and I lost my lunch just from what I saw, because I was looking dead at his leg when Taylor snapped it, and it physically, literally made me sick. As much as I dislike Alex Smith as a 49er, I never wished any ill on him. Now, Roddy White, if they had to come out there with a vacuum cleaner and a body bag, that wouldn't have bothered me. I hated that guy.
Yep.
And he relished the role. He absolutely loved being the bad guy. And outside of him, maybe Deion Sanders. I really never cared for him much anyway. But the fact that he was a Falcon, just to get his name into the sweepstakes to go to San Francisco and Dallas and Baltimore and the Hall of Fame, which he didn't deserve.
Wow. No.
We need another hour now.
Yeah, no, you've got to be looking at a different player.
I played up in as a cover corner. Right. Deion Sanders is absolutely, without a shadow of a diss, without blinking my eyes, the absolute most overrated cornerback in the history of this league.
Oh, hey, no way. I've got
Deion Sanders was a dynamic that just happened to play cornerback.
I don't know what game you I'm sorry, man. That is something that we need to talk about and debate later.
Deion Sanders.
No, Deion Sanders is overrated, my friend, and the statistics as well as what he was able to contribute on the field, man. But we'll talk later. Let's talk about Saints.
And I will give him props because he's championing the cause for Breeze as MVP. Yeah. And it's starting to pick up a little steam, but I hated the guy as a player. He was mouthy. He run his mouth. He talked crap.
And he backed it up.
You know,
and he backed it up.
I come from a different generation of players. I'm sorry?
And he backed it up.
Sometimes.
No, a lot of times.
Let me ask you this.
A lot of times he backed it up.
As a 49er, he played on a natural grass field, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen him with a dirty uniform on?
That's another story now.
Cornerback.
Well, maybe he didn't have.
They get in the
maybe
dirt.
He didn't have to have a dirty uniform if he's playing his game. And I remember that contest between he and Michael Irvin in that couple of those playoff games. He took it to Michael Irvin. He didn't have to be on the ground.
He did.
A cornerback, if you're playing your game, why do you have to be on the ground?
Well, come on, man. A stop clock is right twice a day.
Okay, but that doesn't make sense to this scenario. I mean, you said, was the guy ever dirty? What does he have to be dirty uniform have to be has any relevance to him playing his craft well? It doesn't.
Well, Deion, now I called him overrated. Let me explain myself. Deion was very fast. As a cover corner, he did not have a dynamic, especially early on. He didn't have a dynamic skill set to call on, but he used his speed well.
I can agree with that.
His speed allowed him to make up for some of his deficiencies as a cover corner.
Well,
and the longer that he played, the better he got at the position. I will give him credit for that.
And if we say that about most young guys coming into the league, that's usually what happens. You progress in your career. You don't automatically come in as a major superstar all the time and grow into your position. But I have to agree, he did utilize his speed early on in his tenure to be able to make up some deficiencies. But if defensive coordinators themselves, especially at that time and to this day, can say we did not want to be able to put even our number one guy on Deion because we knew he was going to limit the production at that position, then there must be something to how well he played the game. Bottom line.
True. Would it smooth things over? I told you that I thought Michael Irvin was overrated as a wide receiver too.
No,
all right, guys. I can't put this train back on the rails all by myself.
No, it is what it is. Look, Bob and Sean, look, I know I got to wrap up the show kind of early tonight. The Saints, we've had many hated rivals. And, of course, number one at the top, at the pinnacle of the most hated of rivals of the New Orleans Saints is the Atlanta Falcons. I really do believe going into this game on tomorrow, we're in a very good position. But we have to be able to play a very not conservative game, but we have to be aware we can't give them opportunities. And we can't do that by turning the ball over, and we can't do that by mental breakdowns in our secondary as well. That's how I believe we can be able to win the game. If we can limit those two items, we can win. Go ahead.
I absolutely agree. They're going to be favored, and by all indications, they're going to be favored heavily due to the state of the Falcons roster at this point. But you you can't pay any credence to that. You still got to go out there. You got to do your job. You got to stay focused and realize that the only way you're going to get where you ultimately want to go is you're going to have to go through this, and you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to handle it the same way that you handled the last, I'll say 9 games. I don't want to say, I hope they don't handle it the way they did the Tampa Bay game, but they're going to have to remain focused on the goal at the end of the line. And if they don't, I got news for you. This is the NFL, and any given Sunday, that rule applies. No matter how depleted, there's still professional football players just like you are.
Right.
And if you don't handle your business business will handle you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and look, hey, we've all seen a depleted, by injury, New Orleans Saints team beat a more heavily favored or more highly regarded Atlanta Falcons team in the past. So we know that it's not only possible in this rivalry, but it's actually more of the norm. And we've also seen 2 high-scoring offenses coming in. Oh my God, how will one team stop the other? This is going to be a shootout, and it ends in a 20-17 score. So I don't think anything could surprise us, being longtime watchers of this bitter rivalry. I'm more inclined to lean where you guys are. We could talk the rest of the night about how the New Orleans Saints can beat Atlanta and run down the matchups. I love the way Michael Thomas, he uses Atlanta's secondary as his personal playground. I don't think the Falcons linebacking core can keep up with Ingram or Kamara without Deion Jones in the lineup. And we think we know that the Saints front 7 should be able to pressure Matt Ryan heavily, and they're going to eliminate the Falcons running game relatively soon, early into the game, making them one-dimensional. The 2 things to keep an eye on for New Orleans defensively is how well they hold up in coverage against Julio, Ridley, and even Sanu has been a killer for them in the past. And then on the other side, can they keep Drew Brees clean? Because history will show that, especially in this rivalry, that if the Saints can keep Brees clean, he doesn't turn the ball over, and he will throw for over 300 yards. So those are the 2 things on each side of the ball to keep an eye on. New Orleans turnovers or lack thereof, and can they hold up in coverage on the other end? I think if those 2 things happen, everything else should take care of itself on Thursday.
To me, it's going to come down to whether or not the Falcons can stop the juggernaut that is the New Orleans Saints offense. And with the defense being as depleted, I keep using that word, that's the only one that comes to mind, as depleted as that Falcons defense is, I can't help but think they're going to have a really difficult time bringing anything to bear to stop them.
All right, guys. I think we've covered this rivalry in just about every angle in the short period of time that we've had to do it. And I know we all have families to get to, or dinners to prepare, or in some people's cases, articles to write. Kyle, as always, I love the way you would so eloquently take us out. And since I can't even say eloquently, then I'll definitely hand it over to you to finish us out for the night.
Well, look, man, Sean, tell everybody how they can be able to follow you and Alan on the web.
You can follow us at Under the Dome Podcast on Facebook, at Under the Dome PO1 on Twitter. At 79 Saints is my co-host Alan Ulrich's handle on Twitter. Mine is at JewsDad3721. And we look forward to hearing from all you guys. And once again, I want to thank you guys for having me on. I'm always honored and truly blessed to have friends like you.
Oh, no problem, man. Always good to hear your voice and hear your counterpoints, as always, man. Mr. Bro.
Even if I discount your man Dion.
Hey, look, man, that's open debates doesn't mean that you're right, but it's open debate. All right.
Wow, bro. I like the way you put. I'm gonna have to remember that. Thank you guys so much. I always have a blast hanging out with you.
No problem. And Mr. Rose, how can everybody follow you and your writings on the web?
Well, the prettiest writer over at Canal Street Chronicles, as long as I stay on the radio, can be found at Bob Rose on Facebook or at Bobby R2613 on the Twitter. My articles, of course, are through the Canal Street Chronicles, found on Facebook, Canal Street Chronicles, or Twitter at Saints CSC. It has been an absolute honor and privilege to see our Bayou Blitz Facebook group grow and grow and grow. We are now over 1,300 members. Love the way everybody interacts with each other. And if you aren't a member of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group, A, what's wrong with you? And B, get on board, because we'd love to have you as a member of the family. And it really is a family. Just like the Under the Dome Facebook group, we have modeled a lot of what we do after them and other outstanding Saints discussion groups on there. But please, if you're not a member of our group on Facebook yet, or you know any family members or friends that would like our show and like what we do in the group, invite them on in. You're more than welcome, and not only welcome, but encouraged. But I want to thank everybody for what you've done for us so far.
Definitely. Good stuff, guys. Y'all keep on telling people how they can connect with Bob and I on Bayou Blitz, as well as the rest of the group. Don't forget, you can be able to follow us on www.saintsnews.net, as well as saintsnewsnetwork.com with Barry Hurstis, as well as his articles that he's featured on the web. I think Barry put out around 18 over the past 2 days. So you can be able to follow Barry, man. And our handle is, as always, at Saints News on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as Pinterest, I believe. We haven't been on there for quite a while, but you can follow us there as well. Saints fans, it's going to be a great game on tomorrow night, just to have our team on prime time. But support our boys. Be out there. Support your families as well. You guys have a great and safe Thanksgiving holiday with you and your family. This is Kyle T. Mosley of Saints News Radio with Mr. Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz. Bob, tell Will and Lauren I say hello and happy Thanksgiving to you and your girls as well.
Oh, thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you, Kyle, and your family, and all of our listeners out there. Be safe, have fun, and eat lots of food. God bless everybody.
All right, who dat? All right, boys, bring it home. Take care. Bye.